time to build peak performance. If your plate is always full, this show will help you to gain 10 hours back per week. I'm your host, Sabrina Runbeck, a cardiothoracic surgery PA and an expert in neuroscience, psychology, and public health. 5 years ago, I was in your shoes, working 80 plus hours a week, putting out fires every day, and my to-do list never ended. If that's the way you are working now, you know this is not sustainable. I'm here to tell you there is a better way. I knew I had to get my life back, so I dived deep into the researches of mental fitness and productivity. After implementing the right strategies, I cut my clinical hours by 30% and increased my profit by 50%. This podcast contains stories of how I did that and how other healthcare experts are doing it too. Together, we'll share with you how you can get your life back. Welcome to the Powerful and Passionate Healthcare Professionals podcast. Have you ever felt limited in what you can create in your private practice? And do you ever feel the same way even in your own life? Now, what if this feeling is not really true? It's just something that our head, our brain created. And it's a myth that humans use only 10% of our brain. Magnetic resonance imaging shows us that most of a human brain is active most of the day. And therefore, we can retrain our brain to expand our capacity. And that's why I invited Corey here with us today to speak with you. He is a 40 years veterans consultant, coach, trainer, and entrepreneur. He contributes an unmatched punch of academia, insightfulness in business, savage, and passion for human potential. And his work is founded in his lifelong research and instructions on how individuals and organizations can increase in performance and effectiveness, stretching the bounds of possibility. Corey has supported thousands across 5 continents, including top-tier athletes, sports teams, entrepreneurs, large associations, and Fortune 500s that include Future Shops, Best Buy, Imaging, Micro Focus, PwC. He is an internationally awarded speaker and the host of the HOP Nation podcast. So we are so fortunate to have you here, Corey. Thank you so much for hopping in.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. And I like that hopping in. Nice ad.
We connected through a event that both of us were on, and then simply just like, wow, there's so much overlapping and similarity. He has helped multiple layers of people from different organizations, and healthcare in itself is very similar, although when we think about the practice and performance, many people might rely on, what's your expertise in that medical field itself, the decision-making in identifying patient problems and making the best decision. But there's so much more to that, especially in the private practice side. So much more is on high stake, running the practice, engaging with your team, so we don't have those high turnover issues.
Absolutely. And part of it is a lot of the technology in that we use is, especially the neurotech, is normally limited to neurosurgeons and occupational therapists and people directly in patient care and rehab side. And we wanted to approach it looking at it from a performance side, especially when it comes to cognitive functioning and that. And if we can get people's cognitive functioning better and increase focus and attention and awareness, as well as find early indicators of levels of commitment on team and correlate that with other diagnostics and scales that I've developed in my PhD studies around deliberate practice. So the science of elite performance, to find some of those habits and behaviors that might be correlated to some of those outcome variables And then we can have earlier interventions and find powerful ways to drive efficiency and performance without selling our souls in the process.
Yes, there's no point of saying we have all these vision, all these goals, but once we get to that goal, we didn't enjoy the journey. You're still gonna hit a point to say, now what? What's next? Because I haven't felt good about this journey. I'm just hustling and pushing. And I think most of the time, it doesn't matter how successful you are or people are in a beginning stage, we have excuses that we make up to feel like that's the only way that we can get to our end destination. But even I believe in the Japanese culture, right? There's no such a thing as retirement. There's no such a thing as like the end, because if you hit the end, then how are you going to go anywhere? So it's about the process of performing, not just feeling like we're constantly chasing something. And I believe that you probably seen so many different people in different stages from all these science-based research you have done, and then the people that you have helped. What do you think is the one of the most common issues that people face today?
Well, I'll back up and go. I've had this burning question since the age of about 10 to 12. And it was, can average people from average circumstance achieve, elite level performance or success? And we're talking like sustainable success. And we know the answer is yes, because there's enough mental representations of that we've seen throughout time in history. And then the question becomes, well, if we know that we can, why is it most people never live into those dreams and their full potential? And as much as I've spent tens of thousands of hours researching this, I think it's really, really simple. It comes down to two things. People give up too quickly or too easy. And if we can figure out how to have that resilience and perseverance that keeps us in long enough, because, the, just take the pill and you're there is something in movies, right? It does take some effort, coaching, and awareness. And yes, there is some people that will have a natural starting point that's farther ahead. You might have physical giftings or experiences that allow you to start ahead of someone else. But I don't know about you, but I've seen time and time again where people who didn't start, quite as well ended up exceeding those, because I think a lot of times that myth of just natural talent and that can lead to complacency and atrophy. When we become complacent, we can atrophy, and that's where we can get decline in any areas in that, or
Right,
neglect.
right. And I triggered, but when you were saying that, it triggers my mind when that book, Angela Duckworth, right? Her
Great.
book, Grit. And there's so many stories on how these famous violinists, pianists, all these athletes continuously to train, to practice the same skill over and over again. Not to say they didn't rest. Yes, they compartmentalize in, I have to rest. I have to keep my physical body healthy. But when I'm concentrated, I'm going to play, I'm going to practice for so many more hours than what people feel like it's already done, right? You are the master in that field, you shouldn't need to. But if we don't, the funny thing is, I used to play piano. I was used to be good and then going to yearly competitions. And so I have not touched a piano for the past 10 years for various reasons. And one of my coworker happened to wanted to get rid of his standing piano. So I said, yes, I'll take it. So got the piano to my house. Now I sit down, looking at my music sheet. I'm like, oh, shoot. How do I read this now? And then I literally have to Google it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, got it. Okay, now it starts to become muscle memory. But all of us are in that point, right? Like we know languages, if you don't practice, you lose it, even though it was your native language. And same thing with any motor and function. Doesn't matter how much of a talent you had it, if you don't use it, you lose it. And even you do use it, if you don't keep up that proficiency, you're going to still see a decline. And that really go into how we interact with people, right? Like we don't do any self-reflection and we don't talk to people. We don't ask the right question on, are you seeing the same thing as I am? Like if I'm asking you to do something and then people continue like, yes, okay, we got it. And 2 weeks later, it's still nowhere near what you want them to do. And then is it really our problem or their problem? Or really it's both ways because you didn't explain it as well as you wanted to. And you didn't ask the right question to get that immediate feedback to see if they got you, right? That's part of performance, as communication is a skill to be built.
Absolutely. And, 98% of probably all problems will come down to a communication problem at the end of the day. So communication and relationships are key. One thing you'll find, a lot of people who are achievement seekers and oriented that way can become very task and achievement oriented to the sacrifice of, the relational component. And the people we're working with, we're saying, look, by focusing, you still keep your eye on this goal and the task and the achievement that you're going after. But this becomes a bit of a force multiplier because behind every goal and every task, project, or achievement that you're going to go after is people. Like people, those things don't do it themselves. It's people behind that. So you have to have some sort of relational and people orientation. And it's not like you're splitting parts of the pie on that side to bring this in. It's like you're putting air in a hot air balloon and they're both inside the basket. And by focusing on both get uplifted. And you mentioned the grit book, and we're talking about a lot of the practice that 2 other books from great psychologists like Angela Duckworth would be Peak by Anders Ericsson, because the science of elite performance. So this is the professional athlete or the Olympian, not just the great athlete, like the fraction of a percent, the complete outliers that Malcolm Gladwell talked about, the 10,000 hour rule, that came from Anders Ericsson's work in the book Peak. And well, it came from his peer-reviewed stuff, but that's where that came from. And the other one is from the Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck on mindset and the growth mindset versus fixed mindset, which we all have both. But people who are high achievers will become more aware quicker when they go to fixed and switch, or at least make efforts to switch to the growth mindset quicker and more deliberately as part of their practice to get them to where they are. Because, letting fear and our limiting beliefs or, our egos when we're getting feedback, and if we don't feel good about it, that it's an opportunity to grow and develop, we're holding ourselves back, and that can lead to regret. And if it's one thing I don't ever want to go to the grave with is regret.
Yes, for sure. The biggest thing we can all give to each other, our patients, our families, and our team really is hope, right? Like I was just listening to my leadership coach, Darren Hardy, talking about, if you think about all those we're not getting political, but just saying like political campaigns, the most successful one is the slogan, the tap into the hope that we can create for people. And that's really come down to the small scale. How can we create that mindset shift to say we have hope, right? Technically, growth mindset is that you can see hope. You're open to these opportunities. And even from positive psychology side, we say that as that sage part, that prime that we can always see innovation, creativity, activate, right? Like everything that we can do that's possible, versus the fixed mindset for us is the 10 category of sabotaging tendencies, right? How come you're constantly judging yourself? How come you're feeling like only the perfect result can be the only result to go? And therefore you have that internal conflict on what's the next step. And I have to fix all these, right? Write my notes perfectly and then worry about I got dinged from the insurance company, right? Or I can't task off my team to analyze the report, to watch the finance, to do XYZ, right? All these controlling tendency, or even the healthcare has a lot of the pleasing tendency too, right? Oh no, I just want to make sure they're all happy. But if your cup is never filled, everybody else are supposedly happy, then you still have a void.
Absolutely. And what's the first thing they tell you, in the safety thing on the plane, if the plane's in danger and that and the oxygen masks come down, if you're worrying about everyone else and trying to get everyone else's masks on, not only are they going to, probably suffer, but you're going to go out before you can help anyone. So you're supposed to put your own, oxygen mask on first. And I think it's a good analogy that we need to do that. And um, the other analogy I like to use when it comes to performance, if we think of F1 racing, it's kind of the epitome of performance, right? You're going 200 miles an hour. There's a huge team and technology and everything behind it. But one thing they have to do in a race to win is pit stop. And we need to actually take pit stops as well. And in a pit stop, there's three basic things that are done. The first is they refuel. So on a personal level, that's recharging and renewing our energy. We need to build our energy tank up, because our resilience and energy can go down throughout the day and we need to fill up the tank. It's like the battery power, and we're just plugging it in the charger like our phones. The other is tires that get worn, and we get worn sometimes. So we need to change our tires to be able to maneuver and, not skid and, have a bad accident. And the third thing is we need to fix any damage that's happened along the way that could be holding us back. And, as people, anyone over the age of 20 is coming with some baggage. That's just life and the human condition. And that's okay, because none of us walk on water unless it's frozen. So we can just all get over the fact that as much as we want to strive for excellence, that's what we're shooting for, not perfection, right? Maybe we do it perfect, time, whatever, but it's striving for excellence consistently. And those three things I think are a good analogy, from the F1 to what we need in personal time. And that's not saying, oh, you need to take a 1 week, retreat and go up into some mountainside and, sit cross-legged for a week and don't say anything. You can take micro moments of like 2 minutes in a day in between calls, and rather than just doing other things, to just be quiet, get out and literally get air. Like people, the last 2 years, sometimes just need to get out of the building. I know for me, that's a big thing. Like I'll take a micro break of 2 minutes to go outside and just breathe in fresh air and get sunlight, like real light on me. And, there's a lot of benefits to that, but I'm rambling. So
But yes, I mean, it's a good point, right? People get cabin fever when it's like a big storm coming, they're stuck at home, when people are afraid to go outside, or simply just open the window. Feel the nice sun landing on your skin, the breeze that come to you. And I totally agree with the 2 minute. I call them mini mental vacations, right? You don't have to really plan a huge vacation to feel you need to reset. And yes, that can be something you look forward to, have that one big vacation coming up. However, many people also have what? They need a vacation just to have a vacation. Because when they come back, they rush back into work again instead of giving themselves at least 24 hours to do laundry, kind of ease into life and think about what is looking forward for the next thing. I talk to that with my private practice owners all the time. They feel guilty to even go on that vacation, and especially holiday time when they come back, and then they're like, I can't believe my whole schedule is so packed. I'm not able to even go home to dinner and then have more chart to do, right? Well, it's because you haven't created that boundary yet. You haven't really set it up so you can have a vacation and enjoy it and not feeling like guilty for going out there. And when you come back, there's still a systematic way to ease back into real life instead of just like dive into the water again. And something
And
else.
not use it for an excuse to work during their holidays too.
Yes, yes. How many people can actually say you have a away email template to honor yourself and tell the person who's emailing you back saying, unless it's emergent, please contact XYZ, the designated person to handle the situation, because all other email will be ignored and deleted until I come back, right? You have to set up these things in place. Otherwise, you come back to hundreds and thousands of email. It's just not realistic. And something else that you mentioned about the F1 change is that how effective and efficient they are, right? With doing the tire
Under 2
change.
seconds.
Yes, and we know if they're not effective, it's costing the race, right? And then if they don't make that pit stop, things become dangerous. So that's why we have to think about performance science. It's about effectiveness. It's not just productivity of doing more things. It's the right thing that you need to do to keep you sustainable to go into the next level.
Exactly. And we saw literally in the last F1 race of the year, one team elected not to pit when others did, and it cost them right near the end. So, we might be able to continue on before we start noticing that tires are getting worn and we're having to slow down. And we know that after 20 minutes, like our cognitive functioning and abilities actually go down. And that's why you hear about things and research like by Cal Newport, who did deep work in that, using the Pomodoro technique of, and every elite performer will absolutely put in the effort, but it's intensity. When they're doing it, they are going hard. And if we use professional athletes, because if strategy came from the military, the science of performance comes from sport. And if we use professional athletes as kind of the proxy for elite performance, one thing that they do is when they're on the field or on the court, they are going all out in practice and all out in a game. But as much as they value that as development, they value the rest and recuperation as much as everything else as a driver of performance. But somehow in the corporate world, it's like this badge of honor, to say how many hours and just working without breaking. But that's not how performance works. And the human body can't do that. Like our ability to be effective goes down until we take a break and come back. And literally, Pomodoro technique is, if you go 25 minutes, take 5-minute break and do nothing. That's not take a break and check your emails and do a bunch of other stuff, right? It's go get tea and coffee and turn your brain off of whatever else. And then, or go 50 minutes and 10 minutes and get back in. But you can only go probably about 3-4 hours, and then you need an extended break. And that's why you'll see people that do splits. If they're working out, they'll do 2 or 3 workouts a day, but at different times. And in work, if we're going to be intense, we need to do that in blocks of time. And a huge hack for performance in healthcare and corporate is to really time block and schedule deliberately the intensity, but then build in, those recharge and buffer times.
Right. This is such a great point. So for you guys who own your own practice, one thing that I do with my client is to say, okay, fine. If patients are booked back to back, it's really hard for you to say, I only have 20 minutes with someone, right? And then come out with 5 minutes not to think about anything, just because it's almost impossible. So even you're not in urgent care, you're still pushed to see at least 3 patients an hour, right? And surgical specialty, yes, we have more time. However, the way that you can do time block, one of the trick is sometimes we feel the need to build that patient rapport, to chat about lives in the beginning and before you even get into it. So you really have to shift how you're engaging with your patient. I even have my Fitbit have the buzzer. So I set it as a buzz after 20 minutes. So I know I need to wrap up, right? And then you give yourself that allowance, or even just set a 15-minute buzzer. Sometimes if you really get very chatty, some patients have 10 problems when they come in to see you, even though you only have time for one thing. And yes, that is the problem with our structure and how we can optimize it. A much different topic than today, but you can still be efficient in how you use those time, because you're become more concentrated on what to talk about. And instead of staring at your computer, half looking at your patient, you also can learn how to be more efficient, make them feel like that you care about each other, right? And then the time block thing can be done on all the time that you do your own admin work, right? You can teach this to your staff too. Well, if you needed to build out those reports, plugging out this data, use a desktop clock, right? Like not even use your phone to set alarm, because your phone gonna have ping messages left and right.
Big digital one with the big numbers and that's lit up so you see it.
Yeah.
There
So
you
this,
go.
if you're not watching this live or watching on video, so I usually have a hexagon block of timer on the desktop version, because you just flip it and then immediately turn into your 5 minutes rest break, or the 15 minutes, a half hour of concentrated block. And usually you also needed to figure out when is that optimized time for you, right? Maybe it's the first thing in the morning, or maybe
The
it's doing
circadian rhythms,
right.
like
It's what
75% are morning and 25% are in the afternoon. So your high
correct.
intensity or cognitive demanding stuff, like if it's surgery, you would want to make sure that the bulk of the intense stuff is during those high functioning circadian rhythm times that work for you. And then the admin and all the other stuff that's kind of mechanical that you can turn your mind off and it's just kind of going. That's when you can fill in the other stuff, but also the self care. We need to reach for the oxygen mask a lot more than we do. I mean, you're probably better than I am. It's, I think, a lot easier to give advice on this than do it ourselves. And I'll throw my hands up first too, because, I know this stuff, but again, I'll mess up just like everyone else. So I can fully understand when talking with clients and having worked with different health authorities. And the past 2 years has been exceptional, I think, for the healthcare profession and some of the emergency services practices as well. It's just been unprecedented. And, um, the mental health side I'm seeing, even with the elite, the Tokyo Olympics, we put, you know, these Olympic athletes and elite athletes on a pedestal, I think, sometimes for mindset, that they have the strong mindset. But we're seeing it come out more and more how they're being very open about it. And after the last Tokyo Olympics, during the Tokyo Olympics, I was part of, some Zoom meetings with the athletes from the village, for some decompress after they'd competed and even before, and that on kind of the mental and spiritual side of things. And it was remarkable to see how mentally fatigued and the challenges they have that, I've seen with everyone. And we put even the C-suite in corporate say, oh, they seem to never, sweat and, have it all together. And, as an executive coach and dealing, I can tell you, we all have that dirty little secret of our own insecurities or areas where we're working on improving right now. Everyone has it. And we need to be honest with ourselves and don't ever, feel that the achievement and success that we're having right now means we don't need to keep evaluating where we're at and, that tank and our own self-care and collateral damage, not just to ourselves, but to some of those around us, and really that gratitude and appreciation, because no one gets to any level of success without other people being involved.
Right. That's such a great point, and lead into our next phase is that we ask our speaker to do a quick reflection on your whole 10 area of life and to see where you are and then where you want to go. Anything surprising to you? Anything that you're thinking like, oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yes, I was super happy to see the tens, but there was a couple eights that stood out, and one was the family life side of things, and the other was the health. And I know that that's because I've been in the privileged position to have business, going well in that. But in that season that has gotten busier, it's meant that there's been some short-term sacrifice in those areas. So that then becomes an area where I need to bring more harmony back in there. So those are the two areas that I'll be working on improving here going forward.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your authentic side of where you are in life as well. I know our conversation can go on for a long time, and this definitely is the newer, bigger topic that people all talk about, performance science, and how do we really get into the next phase and not feeling like we're functionally burned out or we're already going down that path. But at the end of the day, really is we want to get to where we need to go, where we actually enjoy life and enjoy our career. So for all the people who wanted to contact you, what's the best way?
I'm going to do something dangerous. I'm going to give my personal email on the internet here. This is crazy. It's Corey, so Corey at HOP performance.com. And the website's hopperformance.com. You can check out a little more about what our company is about. And yeah, and all else fails and you forget that, Sabrina, if they reach out to you, hopefully you can point them in the right direction. And I want to thank you while I get a chance.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, your expertise. You guys can check out the show notes for Corey's contact and additional resources. We appreciate you for spending time on yourself and definitely understand that we are unlimited. And if we have the right strategies, the right ways, we can really achieve whatever we want to. It doesn't mean we all have to change the world. I certainly don't want to. But there are people who can and who want to. And then therefore tap into what Corey said. Be persistent and don't quit as early as you thought you need to. And then help finding the right resources, people, the right A team to keep you going. Until next time, bye guys.